So I know that most of you are familiar with this, but I do feel like this one foundational event was really significant. So you said the first event was Gonzalez and these Mayans showing up. But let's now go to the infamous trip to the LOC, because I remember when you told me this on the phone, and I said, man, this is just wild. And I knew, like, wow, my life has just gotten one hell of a lot more interesting. Because I'm talking to this guy, he's telling me all this great stuff. It fits in hundreds and hundreds of correlations that I'd never put online. And I did that on purpose because I knew that if somebody was fake, they wouldn't know all this stuff. But every time I found a real insider, there were dozens and dozens of connections to this greater body of material, which unfortunately, now that I've disclosed most of it, it's a lot harder to vet people out. But at the time, I hadn't disclosed any of it. I was holding on to so much stuff. I couldn't talk about it because it was very, very dangerous. So let's talk about that night and how did you get picked up? Let's just go through the whole sequence of events as to what happened and where you ended up.
Well, I was told to expect a craft to pick me up in my backyard.
Told by Gonzalez?
Gonzalez.
Okay. This is after you'd gone through this healing process.
Yes, this was much later. Okay. Yeah. I was told to expect a craft to pick me up in my backyard. So I got ready, was waiting in the backyard, and
So you were given a date and a time of when this was going to happen. Okay.
Yes.
And you got dressed and went out into your yard.
Yes, and one of these dart craft came and landed in my front yard, and it was the size of a SUV.
Right, and in case you haven't heard this before, he described a triangular craft with 2 seats in the front and 3 seats in the back. It's kind of a black triangle. It hovers above the ground. And one of the things that is so unbelievably fascinating is that although it was the declassification of this particular issue happened starting a couple of years ago, it was only in April of this year that all these news articles started to come out about the U.S. Navy having an anti-gravity patent that actually works. And in the patent, they have a drawing of the craft, and it is precisely identical to what Corey is saying that he traveled in years before the Navy declassified this document. So now you're going to say the Navy is LARPing off of us? Right? Wait a minute. They describe in great technical detail how this craft works. Imagine a peanut, right? And you got the nut, and then you got the shell. They talk about this thing having a double hull. So imagine a jet that's in the shape of a triangle, but then there's one hull on the inside, and then there's little struts that hold out the next hull 3 inches farther out. And then inside that cavity, they have a noble gas like xenon, and they electrify it with a very high electrostatic charge, and they openly claim in this patent that you can read online now, it's openly public, that by charging up this gas, that somehow you get gravitational waves and that it actually flies without wings. But then they kind of say, well, it's a theoretical concept. It's a theoretical model, but we think it's going to work. Well, that's the first step. That's how they always start, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it works.